by Septic and
Corey Walker.
I'm Marty McCandless.
What's your first name?
Harold.
Harold. Nice to meet you, Harold.
Corey. Mike's attorney.
Mike, how are you doing?
I'm Marty.
Hi.
First name again, sorry.
Marty.
Marty.
I'm Mike McCandless.
Dale, nice to meet you.
Dale Harris.
One I got on with this one.
Danny.
Oh, yeah, that's it, yeah.
We got Mike McCandless.
Hey, so, I'm gonna be, bugging out of here in about 5-10 minutes. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the whole meeting, but we are going to get a live stream if I can post it in the future, so the camera's over there.
Okay.
And just be aware that everything's being recorded that way. I think there's some people that want to also attend the meeting that can't be here that are streaming it. So, and that'll be a permanent record for us to be able to look back on.
If we do a conference call on my phone, do we need to move a little closer so the mics can pick everything up? Or?
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
Sure.
I think if you're on that end, I just want you to be aware the camera's there.
Yes, sir.
And the tape's rolling right now, so.
Yeah, and I during the conference call, I can put the phone down that way, so make sure that you can pick up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the only thing bad about that is now that we can't see everybody, but, you know, anyway, it'll be okay.
Okay, I don't want to see me.
As each person talks, just
Well, you'll be able to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm fine with this one. These guys might need something, but. I can grab it.
Dakota, when we were there.
We want another, just do
I'm
another.
not sure I ever met you or not.
why don't we do that?
I was there.
As well, shouldn't he?
I was there, but I'm not sure.
I think we were in the office when we were doing the chill cups system.
And you guys are.
So I
We're
remember
from Heber.
meeting folks there, but
Yeah.
Really?
that's
That's
a
my old
lot going on right there.
Yes.
Yes,
Are you still involved with that at all up there?
There's some up on the peaks. We don't have any snow. They said it was gonna start snowing today.
We're going there to break it down.
I just came off the hill with Cedar Break. So
Really?
my thing was it was snowing like crazy up there, and they got about 12
But
inches.
he has to have it out.
Oh, wow.
By January
Cedar
15th.
Break, yeah, so
So Brian
I
had
came
got-
back down. Now I've been looking for elk for 2
Gotta
days.
get going.
Nothing?
No elk, but a lot of deer.
How do you spell your last name?
It's
But the
like,
clouds are so low
Saturday,
too,
even though on the
going up
outside,
there,
SAT,
it's hard to see it, or distance either. Yeah.
Great.
I'm going back up Wednesday.
Corey Walker. Okay, where are you on?
Okay.
You my card.
And-
Do you want to slide this one back, Mike? Can you slide this other
State your name.
Derek, D-R-E-K.
Mayor, give you my card.
Oh, thank you. And that's N-E-L.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, it was there, I put it there this year.
There you have my info.
Pretty good when you got the mayor.
I'll see if I've got any more in here.
No job too small from here.
So, what's happened to all the water off these wheel lines and pivot as you're coming into town?
Yeah. What's happening with it?
Where's all the water? Why haven't they been up running?
Well, they just, nobody's working the land right now. Someone bought it and
Developer bought
the developer bought it.
it. Wow.
It looks a lot
So-
better when it's being watered.
What, last year, there was a crop on it last year, right?
Yeah.
Last year.
Was
Yeah,
there
they've done
something?
this upper field, they just didn't do these two lower fields.
Yeah. So I saw the one pivot here, things was green underneath it, but everything else was dry. Just
Yeah.
surprised me.
Yeah, there's some more as you head out of town.
This is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
First time I've ever been here, it is. Amazing.
We'll see you guys later.
Thank you.
Okay,
See ya.
thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
We'll give it a little more time for Hank. I'm sure he wants to be here.
I'm sure he does as well.
It was Marty?
I'm sorry,
what was your name again?
Dale, that was.
That was Marty.
That was Marty.
That was Mark.
I'm just a water guy, not the guy.
So you the operator then?
Yeah,
Okay, okay, good. Water and wastewater?
yes.
Great.
Do you know how to work that?
What?
Do you know how to work that?
What do you have for wastewater? What do you deal with wastewater right now?
Nothing.
Everybody's on
Yeah,
septic.
it's all septic, yeah.
Okay.
I come from lagoons and UV disinfection.
Aerobic lagoons,
Yeah,
clarifiers.
no, just curtains and blowers in the first pond, and then a settling, it was 18 acres, and then a settling pond, and then a UV Trojan 3000 discharge into the Virgin River.
Okay.
How are you? Mike's attorney.
Corey Walker.
Yeah. Yes.
Derek Nelson. Hey, Hank.
Jenny Bass, sorry.
Harold?
Gentlemen, grab a picture and kind of group up because this is being televised. It'll be on evening news.
Yeah, we got you, we have you on candid camera, so be careful.
Brett Kavanaugh's coming in.
Who's sitting there?
How you doing?
David Calder.
Mike's attorney.
Hi, everyone. I'm sure we'll get to know each other.
Okay, did you expect any other people, Hank? Is this,
Just the mayor, but he just drove off, so.
he had a business engagement they unexpectedly had to attend to.
Okay.
I guess
They're gonna do a live stream so you can watch everything later.
Good.
Okay.
Well, Mike, last
Okay,
time I
well-
saw you, didn't have all those funds.
I'm the chairman of the water board, and as such, since somebody's got to do it, I'll get it started. I think we could all introduce ourselves. Harold Merritt.
Dale Harris.
I'm Mike McCandless, Septic Engineering. I do project management for them. I'm also, some of my background, I'm also chairman of the Water Special Service District up in Emery County. So I
Oh,
have
great.
been doing that for 19 years now, so I have a pretty good handle on this kind of project. So
Well, we might want to get to know each other better.
talk some sad stories.
Did you want me to get, there's two other individuals that are gonna be on a conference call. Do you want me to go ahead and get them on now so they
Sure.
can,
Yeah, so-
Randall Nelson, who's gonna be on the conference call, is gonna be,
Roll call and pledge of allegiance is just like a regular meeting.
do you wanna do it over on this phone, or did you have another way to?
If you want to get them on there, then I'm being advised as to the proper way to do this is for each of us to
Keep us in line, will you?
we should pledge allegiance to the flag, of course, and
Okay.
then we'll introduce each other. So
Absolutely.
if you want to get those folks on
Yes, sir.
board so they can listen to what's going on, I'll have it.
Well, network not available. Well, that's not
Are
good.
you Verizon?
Sir?
Are you
Yes.
Verizon? You will not get it down here.
Let me see what I've got.
AT&T is the only thing that's gonna work in this office.
One bar or one
I get nothing on Verizon. My phone is about as dead as yours.
Yeah.
Yep,
You
I
want to
have-
borrow a phone and dial them up?
Yes, sir, if you don't mind. Just restart this again. Thank you.
I might have to get it fired up.
Yeah, just, I don't wanna go through any pictures or anything.
Maybe the Port Pioneer is having a meeting and
Trying to get cell service?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never did they?
Nothing, you're right.
It's like a black hole as soon as you walk. It's a good thing, but.
Hey, but
There is some
Verizon
benefits
doesn't
to it.
work in the building that I'm in.
this build's
So I had to borrow somebody's phone.
spray under.
You wanna go ahead and get Mike on? The meeting's getting ready to start, but first everybody is going to, do the pledge to the flag and then, a round table of introducing everybody. Okay. I'm trying to get the other individual and then we'll.
Okay, great.
You guys have got some rain up there.
A little bit, it's kind of drizzly, we didn't get a lot.
Oh, really?
Mhm. Can I have the individuals' names that are gonna be on? Michael? Can I have the
Ma'am?
individuals' names that are gonna be on this?
Sure, Randall Nelson and Mike Myers.
Thank you. MEYERS or MY?
It should be NY, I believe. Mike. Hey, bud, how are you? MEYERS. Okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker here real quick. Oh, there's no E? MYERS? Mike, how do you spell your name, bud? Okay, MYERS, sorry. I typed it in my phone wrong, sorry, hold on. Speaker. Okay. I'm gonna put the phone down by the end of the table so everybody can try to pick you up here. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you, Mike.
Okay.
All right,
First, we're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
everybody rise, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a roll call. Harold Merritt, Chairman of the Big Plains Water and Sewer Special Service District.
Dale Harris, Water and Sewer Superintendent.
Mike McCandless, Septic Engineering.
Kent Olson with Jepson Canyon Resort Project.
Hank Isaacson with Gypsum Canyon Resort.
David Calder with Jefferson County Resort.
Michael Saturno with Reuse Innovations.
Corey Walker with Epic Engineering.
Derek Nelson with Epic Engineering.
Denny Bash with the Big Plains Water Board.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. I'm not sure what structure we should use here, so Mike, your name's popped up in several emails. Is that where?
This Mike.
Oh,
That was Mike from
I'd say probably you, Hank.
That or Hank, if you'd like to start it out.
Okay. Well, as you know, we have been searching for years for the correct and proper packaged sewer treatment plant to handle this project. We don't know exactly how many connections we've got, but we've got 442 planned residences. We've got a 180 unit planned log lodge. We've got a Native American Cultural Center with about 24 bathroom showers, etc. And we've got a Renaissance Center with a planetarium, etc., with probably 20 bathrooms. So it's going to be a little bit. We also have a 9-hole short course, which we intend to water with the reused water that comes out of this plant. And we got permission from we got approval from the city several years ago, subject to development agreement and a DEQ requirement. So we're anxious to get moving. We've got, what, 4 now potential investors that have the money and are interested. We're just working out details, but we can't get them in until we get these 2 things done. So this is critical. We've been working with Mike for, gosh, at least 4 months, right?
Just had years.
So we appreciate him and his efforts, and this might be the one.
Yeah,
we're going to find out.
Right,
So,
can you guys hear okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just add to that. I mean, like I said, I've been working with Hank. So Hank and I actually got involved, and I'll just expand this a little bit. Hank and I got involved primarily because of the interest in natural gas. So one of the backgrounds that I have has been in developing natural gas systems. I'm actually consulting with the town of Green River right now. In fact, we're just finishing our NEPA process here over the next couple of months to expand natural gas into the community of Green River. I've actually helped introduce a number of bills, and so we actually got originally involved to kind of look at the natural gas system, since you have a pipeline. But as we had our conversations, we saw this development challenge that Hank has as far as getting this for his financing. And so we've been kind of trying to figure out the right type of system to help that would have a phased approach for the kind of building he's going to have. We've recognized kind of since day one that there would be, an initial residential component with a small commercial, then that would just expand up to the full, development acreage. But also recognizing, and one of the reasons why I wanted to bring some more of the rest of the Epic team here is that, you have a very large town. You have a community that's boundaries are very large, has a high potential, I think, for development. And so, we'd rather have a conversation that also ends up having a discussion about what do you do across the road? What do you do a half mile down the road? What do you do, at some point, Corey and I worked on a project earlier in the year where, we have a county here in Utah that's that part of the county's already reached that limit for septic systems. You know, they're already starting to see some surface, some issues show up, and they're kind of at that breaking point where now they have to decide. And you really would rather be ahead of that curve on wastewater than to wait until you actually have citations and, you know, notices that come from the state that you've got issues that show up. So we would also like to kind of view this even bigger than what Hank is talking. How do we kind of view this from a larger perspective as somebody who's operated wastewater systems and so forth? We at least want to enter into some discussion, but, you know, we are bringing Mike here as an expert, you know, as a potential solution that we might be able to offer as more of a package system that has some flexibility, very good cost to benefit analysis that we've done with these looks very favorable. So, you know, I'm not sure the way you want to go, Corey, if you want to have him kind of take off his, or?
Yeah, I think water reuse and Epic got introduced up in North Dakota on some projects up in North Dakota as that oil field was growing. That relationship continued to expand into some of the California endeavors that they were looking at. And our history with wastewater comes from everything from facultative lagoons on up to a full conventional treatment facility. And as Hank was talking and entertaining different options, we see water reuse as a type of a nice mechanical transition that can utilize some of your available storage options, but yet can be able to handle some concentrated treating capacity, and also be more of a cassette expansion process. The last thing I ever want to do in a situation like this is always balancing capital costs with operational costs, right? You never want to come in with a cheap capital cost that ends up burdening y'all in the operational component of it. So finding that fine line, anytime you talk about cassettes and be able to expansion, the first thing that comes up is cost. You know, God, how much is it going to cost me as I expand that? And water reuse, I think, I think they're an example of a very, well, as a good break even between cost options, capital cost options, and operational cost. And so you can see those operational costs go down as you continue to get more trains and cassettes added on to things. But we still get a good viable cost up front, you know, as you're bringing it off. And the other thing is, from a water quality standpoint, they've been very successful in meeting high water quality efforts. California is a great example of that, right? As they've brought in their reuse requirements and reduction conservation requirements in California, been able to meet those discharge requirements. And, you know, we're just upstream from that. So yeah, I think Mike, this has been an opportunity to introduce, Mike can kind of introduce some options with relation to his. And then in my mind, that gives you a feel for what water reuse has the ability, and then I think it comes back to what Mike was talking is, what is the best solution for Hank? What is the best solution for the town? And can we mix and meet some long-term goals? And that discussion allows water use to be able to kind of envision in their mind, how can we best step through this, and how can we meet some of those needs as they look at that. So
and that opens the door, because the other thing that we do is we can then, once we have an idea what those solutions are between Mike and I, we can talk then about financing and other access to capital alternatives outside of the private side that might be available depending on the solution that is picked. Yeah. There are sources of funds that can be used, and some of them are not as well known as you might think. And so, you know, once we know what the path we're heading, we can then start to look at financing. But to look at financing until we kind of know where we're going doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, Mike.
Yeah, sure. Just to give you a little background on Reuse Innovations, the name obviously kind of tells you what we do, the whole crux of being able to reuse our resources, and that's kind of why the company was established a few years ago. Randall Nelson, who's on the phone with us, is one of our partners, and we also have Mike Myers from Old North State Utilities. He's a licensed utilities Mike, did you want to give a little history on your company real quick before I go into reuse, or?
Sure, I'm happy to. So, just to confuse you a little bit, Integra Water is the parent company. Old North State Water Company is our subsidiary in North Carolina. We also have operations in Alabama and Ohio. And we are, what we really specialize in is we are a public-private partnership type of company. Our organization is set up with a family of companies to allow us to offer a pretty wide range of solutions to different communities. It can be as simple as coming in and maybe managing a program for a local government. For those that are familiar, we can come in and we might manage like just a water distribution system or a wastewater collection or the plants individually. And we can get as robust with that as we need to, but the local jurisdiction maintains ownership and control over, expansions, rates, and things like that, where we merely come in and help them manage it. In some cases, we can take that all the way up to where we're even sending out the customer bills, managing the collection process, where we continue to operate and maintain, provide the licensed operators, the maintenance crews, the equipment to maintain that, all of the back office support systems. We have rates analysts on staff. We have engineers on staff, but their role is not to be the guys that do the design. Their role is more of like capital project managers. They're helping to facilitate work with the local jurisdictions engineers to kind of as an owner representative and making sure that projects are moving along. And then we get into, we kind of look at it as a pendulum as you move across the swing there. We get into where we provide private financing for public infrastructure, all the way up to where we would take ownership of what we call straight up privatization and a regulated utility, where the assets are private assets, we call it investor-owned assets. We are responsible for the maintenance, the rehab, expansions, etc. In those types of scenarios, the local jurisdiction would, I won't say they would lose total control, because certainly the local jurisdictions would have input, but largely rates are set at the state level through a PUC, a Public Utilities Commission, or a corporation commission at the state level. Does that help?
Yes, sir. Yeah. And just back to reuse, we're part of a group of companies, Mike included, that it looks to invest into land development projects and things of that nature. Reuse designs wastewater treatment plants, activated sludge plants, SDRs, and MDRs, of course. Now, in the situation that you guys are facing, where you're talking about expansion, that's the beauty of the MDR, the ability to expand as the town grows. Combined, we as a group have easily over 100 years experience, have designed over 1,000 systems. So we've got a lot of experience, and the relationship that we have with Mike is essentially we would come in, we design the system. There's situations where, as Mike was kind of alluding to, we come in, own and operate the system, and there's funds that are available up front to be able to finance that. And Mike and Randall can get into that a little bit more, how that process actually works. Randall, did you want to kind of introduce yourself a little bit?
Excuse me, yeah, I'm on some allergies, so bear with me if I kind of muted for a second. But my name's Randall Nelson. I am with Reuse Innovations. I am one of the owners, partners in the company. And as Mike said, our whole purpose is to design wastewater treatment systems that you know, we value our resources greatly. And if there is opportunity for reusing the water, whether that's for, you know, in this particular case, irrigation to the golf course or to the common areas for landscaping, reuse in some of the public arenas, whatever the case may be, to clean the water to basically drinking water quality so that it can be reused in a beneficial manner. And so that's what our firm is about. As Mike said, we've partnered with Mike Myers. We've partnered with a number of different companies that enable us to accomplish those goals. And gentlemen, we just appreciate the opportunity to be here and presenting with you, and open for any questions you may have for us.
Yeah, and to give you a good example of what reuse, the capabilities that we have other than municipal, waste. There's a brewery in California, as you were talking about. They were rental was at $50,000 a month in surcharges.
A little over, yeah, right at 60,000.
So what we did is we were able to go in, put an MBR plant on site for them, and they were able to take their processed water, clean it, and then reuse it. So
is this Boonville, Anderson Valley Brewing Company?
This is Bear Republic.
Gotcha.
And so obviously they no longer have that surcharge. So that's one of the capabilities, other than municipal waste, with the MBR technology that we have.
So Hank, why don't you talk about your thought as far as sizing and phasing, and kind of where do you start in terms of the system? And
Well, if you look at the map there, turn it around. The other end is this, you can see the road there.
Right on, this is how laid out.
Yeah. The first phase that we've got actually approved, we could start tomorrow, is the Village of Many Nations, which is right on the highway. And right now, we've just got a 2,500 gallon holding tank sized and put on there, because all we have is, well, we've increased the potential. We've got 26 teepees now that we rented out on a nightly basis. And you have no idea how many people from overseas love to sleep in an Indian teepee and get up in the morning and have a picture taken with the chief. And they go home and show that picture, and yabba dabba doo, everybody comes over. And this particular operation was actually going over in the Canada area for about 10 years, very successful. The land they were using was leased land, and it got foreclosed and they got booted off. And that fall, when they were told they had to leave, they said, oh please, we've got 2,500 reservations for next spring already. So this will happen, boom, because they got people lined up. We've got bus tour companies saying, hey, how many thousand people do you want? When do you want them, and so forth.
Wow.
So that's the first phase. And we actually have town approval for that. We could start tomorrow on that one. But we knew we probably wouldn't get the sewer system in time, so we had a holding tank planned. But that's going to be in line to where it will go eventually down to the system. Also, if you go up that road to the first phase on the right, there's an 18, no, right on the highway there. Yeah.
Okay.
We've got 18 lots that already are engineered, and some of the homes are already planned, and we've got building permit on one of them. And
yeah, so it says Paiute Cove is the first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our first phase is we've got a $10 million offering that we're putting out to several investors that would cover the main road up to that point, and the Village of Many Nations, and the Paiute Springs. And the next phase will take it up to the roundabout by the lodge up there. That lodge has changed in design and layout. We now have 180 units and 4 main buildings, and we've got people already looking at that.
This is old. You guys might want to look at some of these renderings we have done at the cultural center.
But I spent 10 years putting the Entrada project together. Thought I'd never get that thing done. And the minute I got first phase engineered and the first house built, boom, everybody wanted to be part of it. Anticipate that's going to happen here. So I've already got my home designed, building permit. I'll be the first guy living there. People say, why would a developer want to live on his own project? Well, that's because I believe in it. But we have, and didn't bring it in, our website, which is kind of static right now. We get thousands of hits every month, all over the world. And so we know we're going to have a huge audience. And a lot of people are coming here to design, well, you all heard about the big 5 advertising that the state of Utah is doing, the national monuments. They've taken their visitation design, for example, was going along like this, and now it goes straight up. They're up to over 5 million this year. They can't handle it. And there's talk about paving this road.
Road specific.
Yeah, they're just,
Main Street.
just took over the hill.
Yeah.
And so, there's a cloud of dust from about April through Christmas over that area.
It really is.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
So we don't think visitation is going to slow down here. I don't know if you know about the Entrada project, but this will be an Entrada quality project. And I like to think that I've learned as much of what not to do as what to do after 25 years in Entrada. And so we intend to use all those good news here at this project. Johnny Miller Golf Course. Johnny Miller is getting to be an old guy too, but he's still got a lot of followings, and so people love to come and play his course. The course will be managed by Troon Golf, which is the world's largest golf company. They manage the Entrada. And we only had room for a 9-hole short course here, but it opens the door for children and women to play. They can play 3 holes, 6 holes, 9 holes with multiple tee boxes. They can go around and do 18 altogether. And for guys like you that got to hit it 300 yards, we'll take you down to Entrada. We've got reciprocity. Anyway, so we're really excited about this. Apple Valley, in our opinion, it's in an explosion about to happen. I mean, as Mike said, we're the 2nd largest town in the state of Utah by size. We're probably
Oh, it is second, okay.
2nd by size.
Right.
41 square miles.
Yeah.
But population's what? 500? 300?
No, we're growing.
But trust me, when it happens, it's going to go crazy. So we want a system that we can add on to fairly rapidly. Our intention is to build this thing out in 4 to 5 years.
Okay. And did we ever get final flow, what the final flow would be for this project? Approximate?
I don't know what that is.
We had some estimates, we talked about some 6,000 gallon per day estimates for that first phase, is kind of the ballpark-ish, but once again, this Village of Many Nations thing is a little hard to speculate with the teepee kind of concept.
Yeah, but we do have 12 restrooms for men and women, showers, we'll have kitchen, and they'll be getting food and laundry and so forth. So it's a major village, and the Indians themselves will be living there and doing this thing. We've got the Hopis and the Navajos and the Shivwits and the Lakota.
Wow.
And they'll actually come, and the Hopis will come and stay for a month, and then they'll transfer and move around. And we've got 7 small units built into that phase for them to live in while they're there. But it'll be very authentic. People love authenticity.
Yeah.
There will be no made in China stuff on our gift shop. It'll all be made in Apple Valley in our gift shop.
And the phase 1 is what we had spoke about before, the 18.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the benefits that I see is we can come in with these modular units and be dealing with this development itself. But as you see development and growth continue on, those modular units can be moved downstream.
So that was going to be my question: is how does this fit into the whole scope of Apple Valley when you say that it can be able to handle the growth as we grow? Will this all end up being somehow into one system, or will we have a whole bunch of different pods that are taking care of different sections of town, more or less as a secondary system for irrigation use?
Yeah, the MBRs can be designed several different ways. We actually have mobile units. They're utilized on a temporary basis. So if we had, we did one for a casino in Arizona, they were only going to do a certain amount of flow. I think it was, what was it, Randall, 5,000 gallons a day?
It was, yes.
Yeah. So what we did is we designed a mobile unit for them, and we put that on site to be able to handle that small flow. And as the casino grows, then we can either expand the mobile unit, we can do a containerized system that we bring in. It's fully containerized, the whole entire system, or we can do a build-in-place plant where you can expand it with additional membranes or additional tankage. So you're able to expand in several different ways with membrane technology.
So for the reuse, you're talking essentially after coming out of these tanks and putting in laterals for essentially secondary system that would end up in Apple Valley's streets for the whole community essentially to be able to use.
Could be initially, it's gonna be required for the golf course and the open space here, but as that expands to meet that vision, then yes.
So do you guys see that your product, like you just said, how many square miles we have for Apple Valley, and probably not in our lifetime to see that happen? How does that fit in? I'm from Rockville. I was part of everything being built for Springdale, the shuttle system, the sewer system. But I see how everything expanded super fast up there. And Hank is right. As soon as the court's plugged up, we're gonna grow. We're gonna grow super fast. So how does that all, when you get into these outskirts of town, how does this all hook everything together? I mean, you're talking about a lot of infrastructure to get secondary water all over
Well, I'll answer that first. I think the reason that I kind of guided Hank this direction with that question is I started looking at the town from the natural gas perspective. The first thing I noticed is all of this.
Right.
You know, dealing with lift stations and all of that. And the reality is it would be next to impossible to design an efficient traditional sewer system here. You don't have a river,
right?
You know, so you don't have necessarily that traditional high point, low point, you know, lagoon type of opportunity without substantial lift stations. And so when we first started talking, the first thing that came to my mind was some type of a package system where, at least for shorter periods of times, it might be 5 or 10 years, you will probably have some kind of, you know, portable, if you will, but at least containerized system tied to the development as they occur. Once again, nobody here can control the speed at which that occurs, but the other thing we like is the short delivery time compared to the engineering required, the pipes required, the right-of-ways are required to tie multiple laterals and lines together.
Yeah, and the ability to expand an MDR plant, and I'll let Randall, he's our kind of our tech expert when it comes to this stuff. I'll let him explain it a little bit more. Randall, Dale Harris was asking the question a little earlier. He is an operator, and then I'm sorry, Hank is a developer. So I wanted to try to get into that a little bit with Mike Myers as well. But Randall, did you want to go just talk a little bit more about the MBR expansions?
Yeah, well, it all is about cost and what makes sense, right, guys? I mean, if you're in, and I'll just use some of our common experiences. If you're in western North Carolina in the mountains, you don't want to cover huge amounts of spaces because your infrastructure is going to cost you exponentially more than putting in a new treatment plant when you're trying to go across a mountain range, you know, at $2 million per mile for infrastructure, and that's just going through the rock. Whereas in eastern North Carolina, you can expand for 10, 15 miles if you needed to, and you know, Mike's doing that right now. Mike Myers has a project, I think you have a trunk line that's 5 miles long. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, well, yes, sir. That's probably short in a mile or two.
Oh, okay. so you know, it all is a cost versus cost when you're talking about infrastructure versus plan. So you can plug in multiple small regional plans, if you will, if that makes more sense. It's only, you know, long, you know, collection lines, things of that nature, but that's really on every case is individual. Every case is unique. So we look at that with, you know, our clients to see what makes the most financial sense. And obviously, you know, with a utilities company like Mike Myers has, you know, all of that relates directly to operational costs as well. So there's always going to be a sweet spot, but every single situation is just a little bit different. So as you expand, we have to look at topography, we have to look at distances between relational units, we have to look at labor costs, what is what size lift stations are we gonna have to have? Would it make more sense to put in a small regional plant? Those type of things. So all of those options are on the table, and that really is a case-by-case basis.
So really, we have a facility that's got wheels on, and so it can expand within a smaller area, or it can look at regionalizing and needing a longer term solution also.
Because, you know, if we ended up doing something like this, I'd hate to see us get 10 years down the road and then it not end up being something compatible for the growth of the community, that's for sure.
And that's where the MBRs really, you know, stick out above your SBRs, your conventional plants. The ability to expand them is so much easier.
Awesome.
These are cassettes, not fibers too, trays instead of fibers, which is
Right.
a big
You're familiar
positive
with the
thing.
hollow fiber membranes then, is that?
Say that again?
You're familiar with the hollow fiber membranes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. The membranes that we use, and I'll let Randall get into the more technical part of it, they are flat plate membranes. They have a pore size opening of 0.038 microns. Are you gentlemen familiar with membrane technology?
No.
Okay. I'll give you the milkshake version. This is something that Randall and I always crack up about, but it's a very simplistic explanation. If you took a milkshake, you've got your milks, your fats, your oils, but about 99% of that milkshake is water. So if you took a straw, and on the bottom of the straw you had a million tiny little openings, and you put that all the way to the bottom of the milkshake, and you put a slow draw on it. The openings, the pore size openings, 0.038, they're small enough that only water molecules are allowed to come through. So once you suck out all the water from that milkshake, you're left over with all the fats, oil, and the greases. That's the same concept with the wastewater. The membranes are submerged into the waste. There's diffusers underneath that constantly blow bubbles up, that scour the membranes. And then there's a permeant pump that puts a slow draw on that membrane. And it allows only water molecules to come through. So at the end, when we have our effluent, we are pretty much non-detectable on BODs, TSS, all of the contaminants that you typically find, no fecal, it's pretty much non-detectable. And really, in order for us just to get to a drinking water standard, I think, Randall, correct me if I'm wrong, we really only need to add a UV to the end of it, is that correct?
Yes, our typical log reduction is a 7 log reduction with the membrane itself. And if you just look at the standards for most drinking water requirements, we could literally put in a UV and some type of a some type of chlorination on the back end, and we would meet drinking water standards. Now, that doesn't mean anybody's going to do it because it is wastewater, right? So, typically they're going to run it through a secondary process, but that is how clean the water comes out. As Mike said, the membranes, they're a barrier. They are a separation process that pulls the water out of the waste stream, but leaves the solids, leaves the viruses, leaves the bacteria, leaves all those other contaminants behind. And the result is nice, clean, clear water coming out of the system.
So do you guys know what your suspended solids, your dissolved, your oxygen demand, what are you guys getting out of that? Your effluent?
The effluent is non-detectable.
Wow.
So what's happening to the solids?
Well, the solids it forms into a sludge, and there's several different applications. In municipal, land application, used for fertilizer. There's several different ways to dispose of it. It's pressed, so you're getting to like a cake form. Randall can go into that a little bit more about. Yeah, you can bag it,
or
right.
we can process it, either way.
And let's also keep in mind, guys, that it's still a biological process within the system. So even though we're drawing water out, you still have a robust, active, biological degradation of the organics going on in the system. You have an anoxic process, an oxic process. So you have all of that degrading the solids and consuming the materials. There is a small amount of sludge that is wasted out every day, but 99.3% of all of the organics is actually consumed in the wastewater by the bacteria.
And reuse is, to my knowledge, and Randall, correct me if I'm wrong, the only company that has successfully been able to treat hog waste at an affordable and compact size. We've been working with one of the top producers of pork for the last 5 years, developing a system, and we're able to take hog waste and come out at the end with pretty much non-detectable. And you're talking, Randall, where were we at the DOD's 5,000?
I don't know, 5,000 plus.
Yeah.
You guys are from North Carolina, aren't you?
We sure are.
That's what I think.
We sure are.
We'll introduce you to a big hog farm here in Utah.
Well, you know,
You got a few.
we've had a lot of success, and Randall, I'm allowed to tell who it is, aren't I?
5,000 down to a 0?
Well, sure, go for it.
Okay, Smithfield. We've worked for them 5 years. We've done pilot systems on site and stuff. And the problem that they had is there's several companies that can come in and treat the waste, but the systems were enormous in size, and the cost was just, it was ridiculous. So they were never able to really fit that into their budget. We're able to come in a really compact size, and that's the other thing about a membrane plant. You know, you're talking, what is it, about a third of the size, Randall, of an SBR plant or a conventional plant?
Typically, yes.
Yeah, so its footprint is much smaller.
Yeah, that's one of my questions.
So just on skids, or you guys literally just a skid, it's just literally a skid plant?
Well, no, there are skid plants. There's several different ways that they're designed. It really depends on the type of system that you need for that area, the flow. There's several variables that go into it to determine the type of system, whether it's a containerized, you know, whether it's a skid. There's different variables.
The thing that I love about this, Bill,
I'll give
is
you as an example here. I'm working on one right now that is a 30,000 gallon per day system. So it's almost double of the one that we proposed for your initial offering. And the size of the system in its entirety is 10 feet wide, 13 feet tall, and 23 feet long. You know, you're talking about
it's a connection.
That's a permanent structure.
Yeah, exactly. It's a connection. It's a shipping container.
Gotcha.
That's modified for.
So we can make it look like a beautiful home in the project.
You can. We've
Like a
done
nice garage.
systems. We've done
Yeah.
systems in the mountains where we had multi-million-dollar homes on a river. So obviously they don't want to look at a plant.
Yeah.
So what they did was they built a house around the plant that matched the houses in the area. And if you didn't go inside, you'd never know that it was a wastewater
Yeah,
treatment.
okay, well, that's kind of what we had in
Oh,
mind.
no,
here.
we can put lipstick on the
If
pig.
they did go inside, if they did go inside, you just said it was a politician.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna stay, right? Yeah.
What I love about it, Bill, is you essentially got these Connex units, right, that you're sticking their process inside. And that can be moved with this phase. Extend your piping a little bit when you get to your next phase, and you get to your
Reset
next
up the
phase.
building.
And then those same products, when and if you want to utilize that in a more permanent facility, then we go build the concrete
Yeah.
facility that you want.
Gotcha.
You take these products and stick into that instead of the Connex, and there you go.
And from an operator perspective, the MBR plants are far easier to operate than any plant.
And
So is this
cheaper.
coming in and grinding first and then going through, or is everything going through?
You'll have a
the-
screen. You'll have a screen, obviously, but when you say grinding, what do you mean by that?
For Springdale, I installed a whole bunch of little pilot E1 grinders that, of course, grind.
Oh,
in. I had-
grinder pumps.
Yeah, low flow, high pressure to get into it. So I just didn't know if it was breaking it down, then you were going through the screen, or you're getting screened first.
Well, Randall will speak on it a little bit more from the
Yeah,
technical.
both ways.
It depends on the,
Okay.
yeah.
If you have a subdivision where you're, from a topographical standpoint, you have to utilize a pressure sewer, then yeah, I mean, we've got systems with grinder pumps coming to us. It's still going to go through a screen anyway, but it can be gravity with solids coming to the screen. It can be pressure system with ground material coming to it. Doesn't really matter. We use a 2mm rotary drum screen regardless.
Yeah, and I was making reference to the simplicity of operating a membrane plant. That's why Mike Meyer loves it so much, because it's easier on the operations, right, Mike? But
yeah, don't lie, Mike. Lie, Mike. No, I'm just kidding.
But the process for cleaning the membranes, it's CIP clean in place. So essentially what happens is when the membranes reach a certain pressure, it's automatic.
Just auto goes in.
It's automatic. It'll backflush the membranes with sodium hypochlorite, a bleach solution, and it'll do it in sections. So as you, in a large plant, you may have 6 banks of membranes. So it'll shut one bank down. It'll backdose the bleach solution into the membranes. They'll soak for a couple hours, and then the permeate pump will come back on and draw the bleach solution out, and it'll go to the next bank. So you're never having to shut down your entire process.
Where does your backwash go?
Backwash will be recycled.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And just a question, a lot of the, since this is the second largest town in Utah, with second smallest population. We have people who build homes here, there, and everywhere, and we're requiring septic systems at this point. Would a system like this be feasible instead of a septic tank, or in conjunction with it?
On a single family?
A single family.
Randall, you can correct me if I'm wrong. A single family.
No.
Yeah, the flow is too. The flow for a single family is too low. There are other aerobic type systems, a Norweco, something like that can be utilized. Now, in Utah, are you required a certain amount of land for a septic tank?
Yeah, 1 acre.
1 acre. Wow, 1 acre. See, from a developer standpoint, when you're talking about 100 lots or something like that, you're able to get so much more out of that land because of not having that 1 acre requirement. I mean, you
That'd
just
kill us.
Oh yeah.
So if we were to, we'd want 10 different systems in this area. We'd like to, if there's one home, we could work something special with them. But at what point would it become feasible to drain everything to the low point and have the houses scattered around a little higher? Or 20 houses, 30, 40,
Well,
50?
I think that's your big asset in Bill, because that's where he's coming from, right?
Yeah.
He's coming from an E1 situation and a treatment situation. All that's defined by how spread out those homes are, and your piping system
And the
collecting that water,
Yeah.
right? And so the beautiful thing about this is if we're reasonably close enough with this treatment facility, then you could come in and put an E1 pressurized system in and effectively get that to this facility. And then you'd be able to treat that water in this facility.
Yeah, you have I'm sorry.
Oh, no, and so I was just gonna say, so I don't know the real break even of whether it's a mile or 2 miles or 4 miles, right? But you'll be able to effectively look at that in a density situation and say, well, if this is located here, then for $3,000 a door or $10,000 a door, we can go out and get that wastewater and get it back to this site.
Yeah, you have the ability to establish, a municipality, a wastewater treatment plant for a municipality, and expand it as your area grows. It's just like Corey was saying, it just depends on where that house is and how far away from the plant.
Yeah, we know where septic costs are at, septic tanks, leach fields, and on and on and on. But we're running out of airspeed, altitude, and ideas at the same time here, because we realize that things have to change. So that's
well,
why
let me
we're
give you guys some parameters that can make it help you make that determination. In Texas, the cheapest septic system you're going to be able to find is around $6,500. The septic systems just for tank, leach field, etc., can run up to $15,000 because of rock and substrata, etc. here. But cheapest is $6,500. So we just finished designing a system for a developer here where all of the infrastructure, the treatment plant itself, and a disposal method for the developer was at a break-even point at around 180 homes. At 180 homes, the engineering, the infrastructure, lots. He can now do it into 1/3 acre lots. So for him, it was 180, 190 homes is where it made sense, where that break-even point fell.
Yeah, thank you.
So what I see, I'm looking at a map on the wall, right? So what I see is we come in here and you have a phased unit, you know, located just down below this first phase that Hank's looking at developing. Then you come back in and you figure out what the cost is of being able to service this existing development in this unit. And you look at some options, some of it going to be gravity flow, some of it's going to be pressurized based off of how it looks, right? You see what that flow is, and then you come back and say, okay, we're looking at this capacity for the development, we're looking at this capacity for this existing part of town. What's the cost of collecting that versus what's the cost of treating that? And then you look at that and you can say, okay, so it's going to be $10,000 a door, it's going to be $12,000 a door, $15,000 a door. What can we do with an SID to be able to come in and be able to get some money to help improve that and be able to expand the treatment plant that Hank's planning on putting in, getting some economies of scale of what we're dealing with. And then that first phase would take that water, collect that, and maybe today it's utilized on this open space, right? But then as we continue to expand and look at the city's open space and what those plans are, then we look at expanding the reuse on the back end of this to be able to get this back in and help the city reduce their culinary water costs by being able to provide this secondary reuse water back on public infrastructure also. Then you come back in here and take a look at some of these other areas and say, okay, what's the cost of doing that? Geez, can we get this and put a forced main back over to here? Well, it's $22,000 a door. Can we get a vote that can support that? Yes or no, right? And then we just start dealing with it that way initially. Then as development comes in, it's very easy to look at that very same thing, right? Because we're probably also going to be picking these up and moving them every 5 years on down to the lowest point of the development. And then that way it'll pick up the rest of that and save some transmission cost as we develop that. And then do some capital facilities planning from the city standpoint to say, all right, in the perfect world, where is our regional treatment facilities going to be? Can we do it with one? Could we do it with three? What would roughly be the size of those three? And then you start working into phasing those three, because you want to know what your end goal is. So we might be able to make modular steps, but the end goal might be completely different than these modular units. Or it might be utilizing the plates from these modular units in your end goal.
Are you charging, or in some of your applications, are you folks charging for that secondary water then? So for the district standpoint, just, you know, for the scenario, let's say we take this on and now we've got folks that are reusing the sewage, they're to do irrigation. We don't have a secondary system here. Everything primarily comes out of the culinary. So this is essentially taking revenue out of the district for that culinary. Can the district turn around and be able to charge a secondary cost for a secondary system? We've got to be able to recoup that cost, of course, somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mike, did you want to kind of touch on that a little bit?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Could you hear his question?
Yeah, I could. I'm sorry, there's too many mics in the room. So,
Yeah, Mike Myers.
Yeah, certainly there are a lot of different options on how you can set things up. Can you charge a secondary rate? Absolutely. In terms of rates, there's a lot of different ways of structuring rates. One of the things, word of caution would be, and there's ways around this, but one of your limitations is you can't do what's called discriminatory rate making. And so you can't arbitrarily go, well, I'm going to charge you, $20 and you $30, but you can set up customer classes and things like that that'll allow you to charge different rates. So, for example, we have a town here, and I hate to use a North Carolina example, given how many we've used already, but we have a town, it's an existing town, very similar, has about 9,000 acres of development that's about to happen around the town. The challenge here is that the existing town does not, two challenges. One, they don't want to lose their character, and they also don't want to burden they want this development, if it goes, to have a positive impact on their existing town residents. And so how we have structured a solution in that case is we're coming in with private financing. We are working with the town, and candidly, I don't know if we can do this in Utah, but in North Carolina, we can't call it a franchise fee. So what we are doing is we're contracting with the town to provide the customer service and billing, and we're paying them to do that. And that has the benefit of providing a revenue source on the new development back to the old, what I'll call Old Town, New Town. Old Town gets a revenue source that comes back to the Old Town that has a positive impact on the residents within that town.
I think it all depends on how it's funded, right? So if the city funds the capital, then you kind of own the water, and then you can disperse that. If private entity funds the capital, then you got the cost, well, you got the value of the water that's coming to the treatment plant, you got the cost of treating it, which might be upside down, and then you got the value of the treated water coming out the end of it. And then at that point, it's just a finance game, right? So.
And it is possible to split that also.
Yeah, you can, if in a private public partnership,
right,
then you can work out whatever percentages. And so say Hank brings his water in, develops this, he has his water, it goes back out, he pays the cost of it, has the water, pays the cost, reapplies it. Say the city already has their water, goes to a public unit, goes through this treatment process, well, there might be a value to that of going to Hank for open space and a cost for treating it. Or that might come back to the city for open space, so there might be a value of that reused water going back and being sold back to the city, accounting for its value coming in and the cost of treatment. So it's just...
Yeah, I mean, what I've seen in a lot of the communities I've worked with that have put in secondary systems, that reduction of cost of reducing the amount of water you're treating, plus the new revenue source, that becomes more valuable, frankly, for some of those communities than the treated water, from a cash perspective. It actually becomes the cash cow, if you will, of the community, is the secondary system. And the state of Utah has new bills that they passed the last 2 years incentivizing lower and lower use of treated water. You know, you're going to get hit just like any other district. Push that level down, push it. But your secondary water, they want to see it metered, but they want you to use secondary water, not treated water for homes and gardens and those things.
But I think it's very flexible, right? And you guys may choose to say, listen, we want to fund regional facilities and anything that's going to be there over 15 years or something like that, right? That might be choice that you guys make. So you might identify where that's going to be. You're going to say, listen, we're going to have developers fund the short term, the less than 10-year stuff, and the modular stuff. And then we'll just work out those costing scenarios, and then as that transitions into our regional facility, that's what we take care of.
One huge advantage you have being small, as far as the population base, is this is the situation where impact fees work. Mm-hmm. I hate impact fees personally.
I love impact fees. But I hate what we did to impact fees.
I hate what we've done to but where you have a small community with not a lot of existing residences who will be impacted, that way, if you pick a horse and decide this is how we're going to treat our water, this is how impact fees are designed to work, because then you basically do that calculation. Hey, you're going to do 27 homes, here's your cost. Boom. There is a formula, there's a sheet that you adopt every single year. Mr. Developer, it's going to be X, and you guys show up the week after he breaks ground with your system ready to go. Yeah. And the impact fee system is already paid for.
And the beauty of it is, you guys are at the beginning steps of this. It's so much easier to be able to get everything planned. With Mike Myers, you have the ability to use him as much as you want. Or as little. Like I said, it can be combined several different ways. Mike is obviously gonna have his criteria, if you will, of how much he needs to be involved in order for it to be profitable for him, and I'll leave that up to him to explain if he wants to. But being at the beginning stages, and I know several of you mentioned the ability to expand. Once we have a plan, once we have everything done, expanding to fit your growth is going to be your least of problems with the MBR system. So, I mean, don't even worry about that part of it. The other stuff is what we got to figure out.
Because we're not really throwing away that product.
If I could just add on, sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike Myers.
I was going to add the one thing that I would not undervalue the, and how I usually frame this for people, but the value of, and I'm going to challenge something, Randall, this isn't wastewater that we're talking about, it's reclaimed water. I just hate the connotation that comes with using the term wastewater. Sure. But the value of utilizing reclaimed water for what would typically be a potable water use really helps to defer capital expense that you're going to have to make down the road on your water system, and there really is a tremendous value on that. And how far you take that can impact. We've got a project going on now where we're taking that reclaimed water back to the individual lots within the community. Those homes are using that water for non-potable uses, both as irrigation water, and then they're returning it back into the actual individual homes for non-potable uses within the home. But what I think is a really neat part of that project is that by virtue of taking it back to the homes like we're doing, that's in essence another distribution system. And so we're able to put the fire protection on the reclaimed lines versus on the potable water lines. And what that does, if you're in the water business, you understand and you're providing fire protection, it's really competing interest. You're trying to develop, or you're trying to deliver a quality product to your resident, but because your mains are sized for fire protection, the water is in those mains longer than it would normally be. So by virtue of putting the fire protection over on the reclaimed lines, it allows us to downsize the lines of the water distribution system. Thus, we're able to provide a higher quality product to the customers. So it just depends on how far you want to push it. By using reclaimed water, you can really push it right up to the cutting edge of what you can do with this water.
So you are in a great spot to be able to deal with it. We were city engineers. I was the city engineer for Eagle Mountain from its beginning up to about 6,000 people.
You knew Sue Fraley then, didn't
you? Yeah. I said 6,000 people, 6,000 homes, and utilized a lot of both private and public funding to be able to meet that growth that was there. And growth has its pros and its cons that comes with it, and you got to be geared up for both of those. The flexibility of a stop, because you're completely dependent upon the economy as you get going, and also the ability to fly, because you're completely dependent upon the economy.
Right.
And so I think that this is a very good way of being able to be flexible enough to do that. The other thing is I'm a fan of the plates. We've dealt with a lot of different wastewater options. I'm a fan of facultative lagoons too, but because of the way that the town is created, this creates a very good way of being able to modularly treat your wastewater and move and meet your ongoing needs with something that's not going to foul, something that you're not going to be replacing in 5 years.
So what do you guys see for your line size? So Hank sets up a plan up over there that's working fantastic, and we just kind of say, I'm just giving a scenario, and we say we want to start feeding the town, maybe upsize his plan or whatever, let's say, so we don't got a bunch of these. What size line are you guys looking at that you actually, what are you guys feeding your reused water out? Inch and a half? What is it you're coming out of here to distribute the reused water?
So we would come back to a pond, right? So we'd want to store that back in a pond. And then, depending upon what Mike was talking about, do you want to provide fire flow with this?
Yes, okay.
Do you want to just provide, I've come into a lot of communities and designed secondary water systems. And the problem is initially you don't have enough water for anything, right? So you might run some churches and some parks and the school, and that's about what you got. But after 10 years, now all of a sudden you've got water to be able to start meeting a lot of various needs. You probably never, you will never be able to meet all of your outdoor water use with your secondary water or with the waste water reuse. You're going to have to add some supplemental water in order to meet that. And so looking at your master plan and balancing your culinary water capacity with your water reuse demands, your outdoor water demands, and your wastewater, you'll be able to balance that. And you might say, hey, listen, here's what we're looking at. We can meet 60% of our needs. So let's focus in this area, and the rest of the town, we're going to meet our secondary needs using this source for this area. And then we may link it. We've just done a number of things. The Alpine City, we came in and took our drinking water, run it through some splash pads, put that back in a secondary water system, and watered the park all around there with the water from the splash pads while everybody else was treating it. I'm like, why?
Why? Yeah.
Let's just do this. We got it through the state and the health department, and they were all fine with it. So we can use creative things with relation to that as you start to grow and as amenities start to come. It's all coupled and unique. I mean, you can be as flexible as you want to be.
Awesome.
It's just a mass balance.
Yeah.
What you got? How do you utilize it as cheap as you can?
Then we have to talk about the permitting component, what we've got to do to get it.
So, so stepwise, right? So tomorrow we have a meeting with the state, and we're going to go with water reuse, talk to them and present the process. There's some reuse innovation. There's some steps of vetting, some vetting process that they go through with relation to a treatment facility that they're not familiar with, right? And so that might be some dog and pony shows, meaning taking them so they can see the site, see a facility operating, get them comfortable. The good thing is, it's a playground yard. It's nothing different than we've used in all these different locations, right? It's just got a different name on it.
Yeah.
And so this isn't Orinco. This isn't something that is, trying to do something different or, trying to make it look like this. This is not that. This is a straight up MBR that I think the process will be relatively effective. What I don't want to do, and say this with the group, I don't want to tie these two horses together, right? Because this is a process of getting vetted by the state and approved. This is a process of being able to have a water treatment solution and meeting both the city's short and long-term goals with Hank's short and long-term goals. Both of these can travel independently through the process, and then as the milestones with the development are reached, depending on where the innovations process is, we can link in and do that. Might have to do some storage, might have to do something else as those steps are going along. But we think this is a great solution, but they have to move kind of independently as they go through the processes because they're on two different time frames. That make sense?
Yeah.
So.
Start tomorrow.
So tomorrow's that first step in that vetting, right? And we'll get with them. We'll start working out a time frame and a schedule with them and pushing that along. And I think the other due diligence side from this side is, what's our first phase? What's the location of that? You guys are probably thinking in your mind, what would be the opportunity of treating the existing town here, or maybe this? What would be that cost? So those kind of costs can be come up with and thought. So start floating that idea around and seeing what's
There's like
feasible.
locking in a decision essentially on a first phase,
Yeah.
so that we can
Yeah.
engineer for that.
Well, we've got the engineering for a lot of this already done. So.
Yeah. So then we just couple those treatment needs,
Yeah.
and start moving forward.
Then you'd have to review the pipe size that we've got, because it may or may not be the one you want, so forth and so on.
Yeah. And then we've got a water reuse component of that, the effluent that's coming out of this, saying, okay, here's what our flow rates are gonna be. What's your demands on your secondary, what's your secondary demands? Look, we need some storage. Here's the type of capacity.
See, we got a pond storage there to store a lot of water. So.
Which this comes back, it's driven, the state drives storage capacity. So that's one design criteria. And then your operational demands also drive that.
Yeah.
That might be another capacity, issue. And so you might need 20 acre feet for effluent, and you might need 35 acre feet of storage for what your water use demands are. So even though we only need 5, can't remember the first number I said, but we need 35, we're gonna go build a 35 acre pond. Here's how we go and move forward with that. And then we take that back to the state. State, here's our storage. Yes, that meets your criteria. Fantastic. And then we couple all those together.
You know, Hank, when we talked about the acre feet of water required for this project, that part of it didn't ever enter into the equation, so that's gonna be not that it's any issue, but my point is we work through this, a lot of this stuff is gonna be in different school than we've been to before.
Yeah.
So it's gonna.
But easy to deal with. Easy to deal with. We just allocate what we've got. And you want to be protected, based off of what you got. And so based off of what they're providing, delivering from a water reuse, then figure out how to deal with that on your demand standpoint.
Well, I'm glad everybody here understands everything.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's important, we've been talking about this a long time, Hank, and it'd be good to get some wheels cranking along and get everybody moving along. Is your plan still to do the first part that we talked about with the fire department and everybody was good on all of that? Get that done and then move further up the canyon?
Yeah, we'll just follow up that road.
So we'll just size everything as is.
So we've got the engineering.
As it was all done.
We've got the engineering done from the highway clear up to the roundabout at the base of the cliff.
Okay.
For the road, utilities, and so forth. Now they may have to change some up. We've got the engineering done for this first phase, this first neighborhood, and but it's just a function of, we've still got to find out how much water we need, which we're still working on.
But what commitment do you need in order for you to proceed with your financing?
Well, I need to find out what it's going to cost us for the first phase. And like I said, we've got built into our pro forma the cost that we had gotten from the other system, which is about $500,000. We can add to that as necessary.
Yeah,
But we'd like to put that part is going to go in as much as we need in the first phase.
What will drive this is your gallons per day, right?
Yeah.
What's gonna drive this is gonna be gallons per day. So the type of development and the numbers of those types of units.
Yeah, there's a lot of iffies in this as far as, the bus stops, how many buses come through, the restaurants, the teepees. I mean, it used to be complicated enough for just a house out in the field.
We're pretty accurate. We think we're pretty accurate because there's 10 years of history on a smaller scale for this project.
But the state already has a formula they allocate for commercial types of, there's actually a pretty trend.
And glamping is the hottest thing going right now.
Yes.
So that's what the teepees are, is glamping.
So you're still trying to figure out water demands. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, we've given him a list of every neighborhood, every facet and so forth, with a number of faucets and bathrooms and showers and so forth. And so we're just trying to calculate, because they have a formula for a half-acre lot, and they have a formula for an acre lot, but we don't have a formula for 180 suites and a lodge.
Well, it comes down to your ERUs. It's what, it just comes down to what those
And we don't know what that
traditionally Well, usually a hotel is about a ERU is used about times and a half to 2, depending on where that.
Well, my point is, we've given all that stuff, and we're
Yeah.
expecting,
I can help you.
I don't wanna make a decision, because I'm no engineer, but.
Well, for the whole thing, there's a lot of water. It isn't a problem. We have plenty of water. I mean, we're happy to sell it. That's what we do.
And we're putting a 1,000,000-gallon tank on the hill, so we got plenty of storage space.
And so that's not the issue. We just wanna, if you buy less than you need, you can always buy some more.
Exactly, if we buy more than we need, we've got some expansion, so that's not.
That, or we could take it back. This is
Sure.
a deal, so.
So I guess I'm asking, is there anything that we can do to help get that number solidified so that that's one hurdle that we're through?
What
The number I
ERU?
came up with is not,
Equal,
Equivalent residential.
Residential units.
I came up with acre feet, and I came up with about 455
for the whole thing.
for the whole shooting match.
Well, that's less than what I came up with, so thank you.
I'll sell you some more, eh? But if that is anywhere in the ballpark,
Well, that'll certainly get us a year or two down the road.
remember, we were talking about 500, and I redid it, and I got to the point where they were varying a little bit, so I just. But that gives us a pretty good idea of what we're looking at for the entire project.
Right,
Now, if you break off the front end, it'll be a small portion.
much smaller, yeah, much smaller.
What I'm focused on is how do we get you what you need, in the short term? Because that's what's gonna drive a decision to go with the vendor, is gonna be having an active, real project.
Right, well, like I said, we've got it, it's engineered, it's basically approved except for the water and the sewer. And,
And so I think we've given you a cost estimate of what that first stage would be from a treatment standpoint.
you have?
Yeah, we gave you one from these guys, I'll resend it over to you.
Okay.
And that was just for the wastewater.
Yeah, so I think you can add that to your performa.
Okay.
And we gave you some additional numbers on top of that wasn't included in just their stuff.
Yeah, well, this whole project, we estimate it's gonna be about $150, $160 million. And we've got investors looking at the first 10 and the second 25, so about the first 35 million, which will really kick this thing off.
Mhm.
And that's what we're hoping to get started on this year.
And their concern is just this, like the state approvals. We need to be able to report back to our investors, this is how far we are.
Okay.
And where we, and they constantly want updates. Where are we with the development agreement that we're working on with Sean? And so these are critical issues for them to drop the money.
So after tomorrow, we can give you kind of a game plan and a
Great.
calendar date of what that approval process looks like.
Please.
Perfect.
I don't know how this would help you gentlemen, but we would, if you haven't received one or talked to our engineer about it, I wouldn't see any issue with issuing a will serve letter so you'd know the water's available.
Like you've already done that once.
Yeah, I thought we had.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That was just on a small portion of it, but if we can get the will serve for that first
So you
phase,
get,
that's,
yeah, that part's covered.
that's,
Yeah.
And then you probably need something that says that we'll accept a wastewater treatment facility that's approved by us and approved by the state. And then that would also be a will serve letter from the wastewater standpoint.
great.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we need.
Yeah, we may want to discuss this a little bit further through the board. I mean, the board, it's a big board decision.
Yeah.
And
When is your next meeting?
4th of November, 1st of November,
1st of November?
first Thursday.
So we just barely missed.
So if,
Yeah, we just had Thursday.
now if there's an issue in getting this thing going, we could call a special meeting and have you gentlemen come in and do whatever. I'd call the board members individually and see if they'd be willing to. I'm sure they would, but if you think it's important, we can accommodate you.
Let's see what the schedule looks like tomorrow, and based off the timing of that schedule, if it's a slam dunk, hey, let's fly me and show me the pig farm, and we're done, then we'll say, hey, we might ought to schedule one early. If they're saying, hey, it needs this, 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 and this, then we'll say, hey, November date's probably fantastic. We'll plan on coming to that and giving you a discussion at that point.
So, yeah, if you
Is that a
wanna,
big planes card?
yes, you'll get one.
That's why he's the chairman.
But if we can accommodate you in getting this thing rolling, since it's been a burden on Hank, I'm sure, trying to match.
We'll get a
everything up.
schedule,
Right.
we'll work with Hank, and I'm sure Hank would appreciate it.
Absolutely. And
So
my
let-
schedule's wide open except for next week.
And then once we know that, we can look at these other things that we can throw out to you, some other options, like, impact fees and studies, there's a cost. I'll just tell you flat out, there's a cost associated, but there's also ways to recover it. So we just, once again, once we know what those numbers are, then we can pull a plan.
We'd like to look at your potential financing options and those things as well.
Yeah, and in getting together in this meeting, we'll have to do some forethought before we get into it. And hopefully we'll be at a place where we can be productive to you rather than just listen and say.
And we would be available, for a conference call anytime you guys needed us to.
And I think our job is to come back from this meeting tomorrow and say, hey, here's what we think the game plan is, here's the steps, here's might be some things that you guys think about, or what else do you think that you need from us as we go through this process. Because I do think there's two processes here.
So
One
you can
pushing
email
on-
us. You've got all of our emails, I presume.
Is,
Do that.
You got mine, you got his.
We'll get them before we leave.
why don't we send
I've
around
got
this-
yours now.
Why don't we
Okay.
send around a piece of paper that we can put everybody's name,
Sure.
contact information in?
Great.
That'd be possible.
Mike Myers and Randall, did you guys have anything else you needed to say to the group before we end this meeting?
From my standpoint, I don't think so. Just I appreciate you guys taking the time to let us chime in here, and if we can be a resource for you, just let us know.
Okay, thank you. Hurdles, will serve letters, quantity of water. I don't.
Anybody have any more questions for Randall? Hey, Randall?
Some financing options,
Randall?
right?
Mike?
Some financing options, and I think that's for both of us of how some of this capital is funded and how the O&M is funded.
Yeah, that's.
Both of those are going to be, and these guys can play a significant role in that, in the questionable areas. They provide an option.
And if there's some Christmas gifts in there somewhere.
Christmas gifts, we're getting close to that, right? You got all your approvals through the city, right?
Well, we don't have them all, that's what we're waiting for,
But the approvals that you're needing from the city are just for the approval of the wastewater.
Just water and wastewater.
And,
Well,
yeah.
we've got water.
We've got the water, what was the other one? Development agreement.
But we got some issues to sort out with UDOT on the highway extension because that's.
But there's nothing that we hope will take that.
Okay.
I assume they're still working on the development agreement. I know the mayor called me, said he was working on it.
Okay. So outside of that, I mean, is that the big hurdles that we see?
Well, it's kind of the chicken and egg. We've got these investors waiting for those things to happen, and then
Okay.
hopefully we'll get some money.
So my goal as I see it, our role as Epic Engineering's role here is to try to work with the state and with y'all to be able to come up with some wastewater solutions that are feasible, identify capital costs, identify operational costs, identify solutions and options of how they can be spent and funded. And that may include the one other level of buying and selling water and the cost of that treatment. And then the question is can we be of any asset in, is there,
Thanks, Mike.
cherry picking some areas that we might want to add to this wastewater process.
Okay. Time flies.
Yeah.
Does that seem like it capsules any other hurdles out there that you see?
I don't dare mention it.
got everybody in the room, get it on the table.
My biggest concern is the financial end of it.
Okay.
There are a lot of other technical people that know far more than I do, and they'll be the ones you're dealing with, our engineer and Dale and Denny. But the town, or the service district isn't in a position to make many promises or to contribute much to this other than the water, and to be as helpful as we can. Like we were saying, we're a very small town, and we have a water system that runs about 12 miles long and about 4 or 5 miles wide. And they wonder why the impact fees are maybe a little higher than other places. Well, we get to hook a house up every mile, so it takes a lot of pipe to get to it.
Believe me, I feel, sounds just like my district.
It works about the same, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, with Mike Myers, you've got probably one of the biggest utility companies around it. The city of Houston actually called him to run their water plant, and they vetted him out of however many throughout the country, and you're talking 200 million gallons a day, and they called him to take over their plant. So you guys are in good hands if you choose to go that route. I promise you. He knows his stuff. He really does.
But I will say financially, there are options. I mean, once we kind of know the boundaries of what we're looking at, then we can figure that piece. I mean, once again, I'm glad we don't have 10,000 residents already that we have to figure a way to, the impact, that's when impact fees get ugly. Because, you can only use it on new development, and the people across the street are pissed off because they can't spend the money on their thing, In your situation, the developers who are gonna want to come, it's gonna be perfect, but there are other tools, and we've had some discussion with the city about things like special assessment areas. That's a tool that can be used. USDA, frankly, we talked a little bit to Hank, was looking to get some money out the door for water and sewer.
Yeah, I realize as this unfolds, it's gonna become clearer, and plan A never works, or as far as I've
It's
gone.
little a b, right? That we
Section A, B, C, D.
We firm things up around RRS usually, but anyway, we're happy to work with you, happy to see you're interested in the area, and we need some growth, and need some good people to work with, so.
Of course, for me, all I ask is just, a little 3-bedroom cottage or something.
The one up on the hill with the $1 million lot.
Take it back in the car.
It's funny too. We are, with Mike Myers, we're looking at a project in Oklahoma. I can't talk too much about it because of an NDA, but it is, it's a massive development. They're talking several thousand homes. But I keep teasing the main investor. So look, all I want is just one of those condos that you're doing right on the lake there, and every time I talk to him, I make sure I throw it in just a little.
Has everybody signed it?
Derek can get that out to everybody.
Hank, can I hang on to these?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay?
How would we, just a side question,
Yeah.
I was explaining that this is a wash right now, and, obviously we want to capture that, and just, because when it rains, that wash fills up. You guys know, it gets crazy. So we want to capture that and reuse that. How can we implement your system? And, I mean, we would use this as a holding area. We also have another pond over there.
There's probably some water rights.
Yeah.
There's probably some water rights associated with that drainage.
You ought to get a hold of the Corps of Army Engineers also.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be really careful with that.
Okay.
I don't think there's any water rights, it's just coming out of the sky.
The Corps owns those drainages.
Yeah, so oftentimes irrigation companies, all these people have filed on all the flows that are coming down through there, and so we just need to do some research and verify what rights are actually held on it. If there's no rights, then you can work with the Division of Water Rights to file on that, and then you can store that and utilize it, but there's a process in which
So what do you guys?
only farmers can go deck off a drainage like that.
For disposal, what are your what are you guys looking at for this project for
It
disposal?
is,
I mean, trying to reuse as much as we can.
We're gonna have to look at water storage and try to optimize the storage.
So, you know, worst case, in my opinion, the worst case, any water you can't use is gonna go into this drainage, which
They
is.
can't,
which
they
is
sort of
just
on
going
engineers
down.
on
But-
drainage.
Oh, I know.
So you're only talking
So they
two
can't,
months that
they
you're not
can't
gonna
modify
get
that
something.
and capture it without.
And
very
so,
stressing on that.
you're only
That
talking
would
about
work
storing
but
2 months worth of water, because the
Right.
rest of the time, that's gonna be growing grass.
Yep.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, the amount of water that you can actually reuse for irrigation, back to toilets and laundry facilities,
from the bank.
you're gonna use up
Yeah.
pretty, all the water you can.
Individuals.
You're probably gonna need to take from
Jerry.
somewhere.
We didn't have that
Until we get those.
part in mind. So
Did we
that's-
get a copy of the original contract?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, you're gonna need more water than what we provide.
Right, exactly.
One other thought.
We do,
I think you have to consider putting in a secondary
it's
system.
still in pieces, but we do
It's
have.
always
Because
cheaper to
my
do it
question
now.
would be-
Oh, absolutely, I mean,
Put a
I'd
second,
agree.
develop a
He
secondary
has to
system
list
for
all the
this.
incumbents against that.
Because we've got,
Even if they have to just.
Did he list
well
all
water
of
to fill it, to use it first.
yeah, because we've got a lot of grass.
We need to adjourn.
You don't wanna have to pay the tree down.
Most of the evaporates, but it's not cheap.
Okay, good idea.
Is this helpful?
We'll just erase the whole thing.